Our liberties we prize, and our rights we will maintain. This is Iowa Civil Rights History Podcast, where we tell stories about the contribution Iowans and the state of Iowa has made to advance the civil rights movement. Past stories are being told, present actions will be highlighted, and preparation for the future will be discussed. Here is your host, Erick Nganyange.
Welcome to the Iowa Civil Rights History Podcast. On June 15, 1869, it marked a historic milestone for women's rights in the United States, as Arabella Mansfield of Mount Pleasant, Iowa, became the first woman in the United States to be admitted to the Iowa Bar Association and granted a license to practice law. This groundbreaking decision by the Iowa Bar Association made Iowa the first state in the nation to allow a woman to practice law. My guest today is a retired judge, Emily Chafa, who has devoted nearly 20 years researching, writing, and speaking about the life and legacy of Arabella Mansfield. Judge, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for the gift of your time today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You said an apology is the sign of a secure leader.
I think it's very true. If you have the strength to apologize when you've made a mistake, when you've made an error, then that shows you have the capacity to admit your own failures, admit your own mistakes, and communicate your knowledge of that error or that mistake to another person.
So do you think if you have a leader that never apologizes, that's a red flag?
Yes. That'd be a red flag.
And another thing you mentioned about your parents, they told you use your talent, time, and treasure to better your community.
My father was a Methodist minister in Iowa, so we lived in various small towns in Iowa as I grew up. And that's a common statement in probably many churches, but specifically in the United Methodist Church where my father preached. That's just a mantra that's always stayed with me. And all three are important. Your time is very important. Your talents, whatever those talents might be, whether they're speaking or singing or any other, it's important to share them with others. And then, of course, your treasure. Every nonprofit needs money, needs funding. So it really is important, all three. And I guess I probably spend a lot more time and talent, or hopefully talent, what I have of talent, with others, and then try to share my treasure as I'm able.
You grew up, you wanted to be a Broadway star. Broadway star, music therapist, and psychologist. Then you ended up being a lawyer.
All true. Somehow good researchers seem to find the Broadway star part. I'm not quite... I would hope that'd be buried somewhere, but it's not. But yes, it's true. I confess.
I can see the psychologist part with the lawyer and the judge kind of go hand in hand.
Yes.
But then I was like, what did that come all about? You want to be a Broadway star?
Oh, growing up, I was always a performer, a singer. Never a great dancer, but I was in all the musicals in high school and then some in college and some post-college. So I've just always loved performing. And that's a dream. And then you quickly realize, oh, no, that's not real. There are very, very few talented people actually make it to Broadway, and lots of other people don't,
So you killed that dream in college?
Yes.
You never came back?
No, I just decided to keep performing as a hobby instead of as a profession. And I am still doing that. I'm still doing some performing here and there.
Choir and church and stuff like that? Okay. Do you do like any live performance at all? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do? What kind?
Yes, I sing with a choral ensemble called the Des Moines Vocal Arts Ensemble. Okay. And we give concerts several times a year. And then, yes, almost every Sunday in church, I'm part of a choir. Or sometimes I'm a soloist in special services during the summer. And then, I'm part of a reader's theater right now through my church. And then I do these dramatic vignettes about Arabella Mansfield because I'm fascinated with her. So I just perform those. They're like a dramatic monologue.
Undergrad from Drake?
Yes.
What did you study at the undergrad?
Psychology.
Oh, so that worked out perfect.
That was my psychology degree. And I do think the psychology degree, and especially the behavioral psychology we focused on at Drake, was very useful in my legal career. Just trying to understand people, read people, find ways to get information that I needed.
Catching people lying.
Yes, and determining credibility is what the term we use. That's a nice way to say.
So grew up in Iowa?
Yes.
Born and raised?
Yes.
Okay. Siblings?
3 brothers, 1 sister.
Both in Iowa?
None of them are now. We were all educated in Iowa, and then gradually most of us moved to Chicago and lived in Chicago for several years.
Okay.
And then now we're spread across the country. I've got a brother in Palm Springs, California. A sister just moved to Asheville, North Carolina. A brother in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas area.
Yeah.
And 1 brother still in Chicago area.
Okay. Oh, so that makes sense why you went to Loyola?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was trying to tie those together. I'm like, why did you leave Drake? There's a Drake Law School. Okay.
My sister and I moved to Chicago after we both graduated from Drake and on a grand adventure, and then went to law school there and stayed there for a few years and then moved back to Iowa.
Okay. When you went to law school, did you think about becoming a judge, or you were thinking I just want to be a lawyer? Or was that on your radar?
Becoming a judge was not on my radar at the time. I was just really focusing on law school and then what type of law I wanted to practice.
Yeah.
And I worked basically full-time all the way through law school. So I worked in a variety of law offices. I learned what I liked to do or what I wanted to do. And I also learned what I didn't want to do.
That's very important.
Like to do. When I'm talking to law students now, I describe those stories and tell them it's as important to learn what you don't want to do as it is to learn what you want to do or what you enjoy doing and what you're passionate about doing.
Were you in civil law or were you in criminal?
I did both civil and criminal. So I worked in a large law firm for 1 year for my first year out of law school in Chicago, and then I was a prosecutor.
Okay.
So I prosecuted a variety of cases in Chicago. And then when I moved back to Iowa, I still did some criminal law, some criminal prosecutions, but also mostly civil litigation for many, many years.
What was your favorite between the criminal and civil?
I really enjoyed criminal prosecution. I really liked the pace of it, and it was just interesting. Every case is a different case. The civil litigation was interesting too because you're always learning something new, a new area of law. Or I really always enjoyed researching something new. What do we need to know about this case? And going back to the psychology piece you mentioned earlier, taking depositions or questioning witnesses is an interesting way to use that psychology background of determining how can I get information from this person? How can I ask a question so they'll answer that question and I'll gain all the information I need, and or what signals can I use to determine whether or not I think they're telling the truth.
So how long were you been a judge before you retired?
For about 9 years.
And then you retired in 2019?
Yes.
What are you doing with your time now?
Sharing my time, talent, and some treasure with my community. So I'm doing a lot of presentations, what we call CLE or continuing legal education presentations, primarily diversity-related topics. And then also writing a few articles here and there, trying to read my way through my very tall bookshelf.
I know.
Not successfully there. But spending time on the things I really enjoy doing. I'm judging mock trial. I love judging mock trial, middle school right now, high school in the spring.
Nice.
And then just a lot of volunteer work.
Yeah.
To further, it sounds hokey, but to further my passions and to really make a difference and do what I can.
Arabella Mansfield. So when was the first time you came across her story? It's
been at least 20 years.
Okay.
So more than 20 years ago, I was involved with IOWA, the Iowa Organization of Women Attorneys.
Okay. Yeah.
And others who'd been in the organization longer than me told this story that, did we all know that the very first woman admitted to practice law in the United States was admitted in Iowa on June 15th, 1869. And it was Arabella Mansfield, also known as Belle Bab Mansfield. And why don't we celebrate that? Mm-hmm. Why don't all women lawyers know that fact? Yeah. Why don't all lawyers know that fact? Mm-hmm. So it was about 20 years ago when we decided to give an award in her honor and memory every year for that purpose.
Okay.
And that's when I became, I think it's safe to say, obsessed with her story.
So she was born in Burlington, Iowa, May 23rd, 1846, moved to Mount Pleasant. Where did she go to high school?
In Mount Pleasant.
Mount Pleasant. Okay, because in 1866, she graduated from Iowa Wesleyan College?
Yes. So okay. Iowa Wesleyan College is located in Mount Pleasant, Iowa. And her father died in California in a mine tunnel cave-in.
Oh, wow.
When she was about 6 years old. Ooh. And the amazing action her mother took was to secure a scholarship for Arabella Mansfield at Iowa Wesleyan College, and along with her brother as well. But that fascinated me. Her mother was farsighted enough to think,
education
education is the key for my daughter. I don't want my daughter to be in the same predicament that I'm in, suddenly widowed with two young children. And what her mother said was, I realized the potential precariousness of total reliance on a husband. Yeah. So she decided her daughter's education must be guaranteed, must be secured.
Yeah. What did she go to college for? What did she major? Do we know? Did they even have majors back then? Did people go to college to major something, or did they just...
I haven't ever heard what her college major was, although now you've sent me down the path for more research. She was the valedictorian of her class. I know that. And then she became an academic. She immediately began teaching at Simpson. And later, she was the dean of the School of Fine Arts at Pauw University in Indiana. So her major may have been music and fine arts, but perhaps English, perhaps writing. Good question.
Interesting. She taught at Simpson College?
Yes, Simpson College in Indianola, Iowa.
So that was right after she graduated?
Yes. She
started teaching. Do we know what she was teaching?
No, I don't.
No?
Another question, more research for me.
And then 1867, she started studying law.
Yes.
In her brother's law office?
Yes, in Mount Pleasant.
When did people start going to actual law school? Was that normal back then? Like people you start under the lawyer and then you go take the bar exam and you pass, you become a lawyer?
People could take both paths or either path, I should say. At the time, of course, a woman, wouldn't have thought to go to law school.
That's true.
She was more or less an experiment. But it was common for many people to study the law or read the law under the tutelage of a lawyer in their law office. The University of Iowa never discriminated against, women or people of color in admission, to the university or to the law school. But as far as we know, the first, women were admitted 1870s, and the first African American men were admitted in the late 1870s. So it was more common and probably easier at the time to study in your brother's law office, in the same small town, than to travel, all the way to the law school in Iowa City.
Self-taught, basically. And then go take the test.
Yes, it's fascinating to me to think back because we spent 3 years in law school, took all these classes a semester long, and then we studied in addition to that 3 years of education, we studied for the bar exam for at least 6 weeks after we graduated from law school. And so received this concentrated education just for the bar exam. And then took the bar exam and passed it. But thinking about just studying for 2 years and then taking the exam, it is really interesting.
Yeah. So the idea to study under the lawyer, why? Is if you have questions, or why was that important to be for her even to study under her brother?
Sure. First, the law office would be where the books would be kept. But then also, yes, to be reading, to know what to read, what subjects should you study for the bar exam, what cases are important to read, what general topics are important, what facts should you know, what information should you know. And then, as you suggested, I'm sure it was important to have someone there to ask that question. Just like we did in our classes, in our law school classes.
You're right.
You could ask the professor. So the professor in this case would be her brother, the lawyer, and to make sure that she was on the right path. If someone to bounce ideas off of, or as we did throughout law school, you have good friends or study partners you study with, and you sometimes debate back and forth, or you just converse back and forth to make sure you both understand the material or understand the legal analysis.
You're right. So she just, now you say that, now it makes sense. Like, so the person you're studying under just become basically like your professor.
Correct.
Like, hey, what do you think about this? Okay. 1868, she's married to John Mansfield.
Yes.
A professor at Iowa Wesleyan College.
Yeah, he was a professor at Iowa Wesleyan College, a Union veteran. All this took place with the backdrop of the Civil War and post-Civil War and all the tumult in the country.
Yeah.
John Mansfield, her husband, actually studied law with her.
That's crazy. And they took the bar exam at the same day.
Same time.
Wow.
Same day. We're sworn in at the same time.
Same time. Mount Pleasant also was huge, one of the Underground Railroad towns.
Mount Pleasant was a very progressive town at the time.
Yeah.
Because, yes, it was a number of abolitionists lived there, a stop on the Underground Railroad. John Brown visited Mount Pleasant and recruited a few people to accompany him. And they also had a co-ed educational institution called Howe's Academy, which that was unusual to have a co-ed institution at the time in the small town, in addition to Iowa Wesleyan College, which was a co-ed.
Do you know if she had any involvement with the Underground Railroad in Mount Pleasant?
That I don't know. She was very involved in the women's suffrage movement. And that's where she really focused most of her time after she became a lawyer, in addition to academia. But I do not. So now I've got another topic to research.
Yeah. Another thing I didn't see is, did they have kids? Johnny? No, they did not.
No, they didn't have children, and I wonder if that's one of the reasons it's so hard to find information about her, because she was obviously a very modest woman. She didn't write about herself. Her husband didn't write that much about her, even though they're both academics, which is interesting.
1869, she's ready to sit for the bar exam. Because women were not denied to study law, but they were denied to practice law. So you can study law as much as you want to, but you're not going to be practicing it. So she did finish studying and she's ready to sit for the bar. She was let in to sit for the bar. The district, what's the district court judge name? Francis Springer.
Francis Springer.
Do you think he was ahead of his time? Because I felt like he bent the rules a little bit.
Yes.
To allow her to
interpreted
yeah.
the law very broadly.
I think if I'm quoting him right, he say the statute does not deny women to sit for the bar exam. It just said who can.
Yes, so he interpreted the word male, which we should probably say first the law in Iowa at the time, or I should say the Iowa Code said in order to become a lawyer licensed to practice law in the state of Iowa, you had to be white,
male,
over the age of 21, male, and of proper moral character and fitness, which is true for most state laws. She qualified under the word white. She was over the age of 21. She was certainly, of proper moral character.
Yeah.
But the word male. Judge Springer interpreted the word male to mean all humankind in general, or gender neutral, which nowadays laws that include, a certain gender are commonly interpreted as gender neutral. Mm-hmm. But in 1869, correct, that was a very unusual interpretation for him to make.
He knew what that meant, but
yes. But he interpreted that word, the word male, to be gender neutral, which opened the door for Arabella Mansfield to actually take the bar exam and then be admitted if she passed the bar exam.
So you can study for the exam, and then when you're ready to take the bar exam, what was that process? You need to apply to the Iowa bar, and then how did that work?
Yeah, so the Iowa Supreme Court governs, regulates the bar admissions. So, yes, a person would study, would be ready to take the bar exam, and would be required to apply to take the bar exam and say, I meet the qualifications, the requirements in this statute. So may I please take the bar exam and be admitted to practice law? Of course, I'm oversimplifying. Ours was a detailed written application with lots of background checks and so on. But back then, I'm presuming it perhaps wasn't as complicated as it was in 1990. But yes, she would have had to apply, ask to be examined, to take the bar exam, and basically say she met the qualifications.
So then that will go to, because I'm trying to figure out how did this ended up at the district court judge Francis to make that decision. Because I'm assuming after she did apply, people looked at it and be like, whoa, you are not supposed to be doing this. Let's turn this to, so probably maybe they turn to the judge and be like, Judge, look into this because I think she should not be taking this exam. Because otherwise you can just look at the application and be like, no, you don't qualify, and put it in the trash. How did that end up on a judge's bench?
Correct. So the matter was assigned to District Court Judge Francis Springer. So that's what a wonderful door to open, or a possibility for that door to open, that it was assigned to him. He was sympathetic to the women's suffrage movement, so that maybe that helped.
Yeah, there you go.
And he perhaps was a judge more inclined to consider this interpretation, but he did. In his in his statutory construction, which is something judges do all the time, you interpret the statute, you decide what the statute actually means. He said that words importing the masculine gender only may be extended to females. So he found another section of the Iowa Code or another Iowa law that said the word male, basically said the word male could be
just
interpreted to mean men and women or gender neutral. And then he said, since the word male in that statute about bar admission can mean females or women, then she's qualified.
She's qualified.
She can go ahead and take the bar exam.
Wow. And she became the first woman to do that in the United States.
Yes.
Right from Iowa.
Yes.
Now, going back to Judge Springer, does that show us how much power judges have to make our society better or worse?
Yes.
For just that one decision,
Yes.
that judge changed the whole country.
Yes.
She's going in there. She take the bar exam. The judge said, "Oh, you good? Go ahead." She took the bar, scored pretty good.
Yes.
Her husband, John, also say, hold on. You cannot leave me behind. He jumped in also. He took the bar exam. He passed. They were both got admitted to practice law the same day, June 15, 1869. What was the reaction in the state? Was that a big deal, or was it like, it's another day in Iowa?
No, it was a big deal.
Okay.
To put it mildly, the Mount Pleasant Journal wrote an article about this momentous occasion, including the quote from the bar examiners, the bar examination committee, which is a wonderful quote. And I'm so grateful to the Mount Pleasant Journal for including all these details in their article, or that this detail would probably be lost forever. And then other newspapers around the country picked up on that article. So it did become national news.
What was the quote on from the newspaper? Do you know? Do you remember?
The committee, yes.
Okay.
So the bar examiners felt justified in recommending this woman, Arabella Mansfield, be admitted by the demands and necessities of the present time and occasion. They stated, your committee, which meant the bar examination committee, take unusual pleasure in recommending the admission of Mrs. Mansfield, not only because she is the first lady that has applied for this authority in the state, but because in her examination, she has given the very best rebuke possible to the imputation that ladies cannot qualify themselves for the practice of law. That is powerful.
Yes. Now she admitted to practice law, but she never practiced law.
No.
Did she do that to just break the ceiling? To say, hey, I'm doing this for the women. I have no intention of practicing law. I'm doing this for you guys.
I honestly believe that was her purpose. I've researched this extensively. I've talked to people who live in Mount Pleasant, who have a lot of history there, and they've researched the same issue because it is an obvious question.
Yeah.
And so many people are curious about it, but no one could find any evidence that she ever practiced law. She didn't work in her brother's law office, which could have been, an obvious thing to do. There's no evidence of her name as an attorney in a court case in, the Mount Pleasant area in Henry County, Iowa. And no one could find any record of her actually practicing law. So the only conclusion, plus some of the things she said, she was interviewed for the newspaper article, and then she was active in the suffrage movement and made a number of speeches, here and there.
Yeah.
And the only thing she would say is that she was proud to, to pave the way for others. But perhaps in addition to paving the way for others, it was to help her understanding and bolster her arguments in the women's suffrage movement, to understand the laws and the inequality of those laws would help her. Speeches would help her in debates, would really help her work in the women's suffrage movement. And I know that's why a few other women attended University of Iowa Law School, to help their understanding of the laws, so they could clearly articulate the importance of women's right to vote and equality. So,
do you guys as women lawyers feel responsibility for what she did, for what you need to do going forward?
Yes, in many ways. At the 150th anniversary of her swearing in, we had a celebration in the very room where she took the bar exam and was sworn in downtown Mount Pleasant. It's called the Union Block Building, and it still exists. It's been restored to its more or less original state.
Oh man, we should have done the interview in there.
We could have. I thought it was very important to be there in the very room where it happened and celebrate that 150 years. And we spent some time talking about, like, what does her legacy mean for us? Our responsibility now to women lawyers. First, step up, apply yourself to a momentous task, and see it through. She decided to read law in her brother's law office. She did it. She applied to take the bar exam. She saw it through. She did it. Prepare to be the first in a seemingly impossible professional position. Graciously accept support from your family, from your spouse, and from your friends to achieve your goals. Arabella Mansfield accepted support from her brother, studying law in his office, from her spouse. Her husband studied right along with her, and her many friends who supported her. Appreciate a mother who plans for a daughter's college education. Earn a stellar reputation with powerful people in your community who can open doors for you. I'm sure that Judge Francis Springer knew Arabella Mansfield and decided to review the statute carefully and interpret it in a generous manner, in a gender-neutral manner, perhaps because he knew her and of her stellar reputation and wanted to open doors for her. Same for the Bar Examination Committee. She impressed them enough that they allowed her to take the bar exam, and then were indeed impressed with her performance. You know, presume that women are qualified to be lawyers, to be judges, to be leaders in the legal profession and in our community. Presume women are qualified to do all these things. Use your legal education and the virtue and the power of the law to open doors for others, whether it's in your own profession or those who are not treated as well as others. Open those doors. Use the virtue and the power of the law to do so. Pay it forward by reaching a hand down to the law student or young lawyer. Mentor the next generation by encouraging them to blaze a new trail and supporting them all along their path.
1870, the Women's Suffrage Convention. Did she attend that convention, or did she put the convention together?
She put the convention together and was the main speaker.
What was the agenda of the convention? What they were trying to get done?
They're trying to gather support throughout the state of Iowa for more women to spend their time, talent, and treasure on the movement
Okay.
to become active members of the women's suffrage movement and to,
Yeah.
so for example, women didn't have, once a woman married, she lost her property, more or less. Like didn't have property rights anymore. Her property
Becomes a
became
husband.
her husband's property. A person who's educated in the law would definitely say,
See,
wait a minute.
Yep.
This is my property. This
Yeah.
was my family farm, or this is property I brought into the marriage and it should still belong to me, or we should at least have equal rights to that property. Children, divorce was very, very rare in those days. But in the case of divorce, women lost their children, lost custody of their children, lost access to their children. So you can imagine if there was domestic abuse, which we know there probably was, nobody talked about it, but the coercion that could occur in an abusive marriage, in an abusive household was, sure, you can leave me, but I get the kids.
And I get
you can leave me, but
I get the farm,
all
I get the
property,
land.
and you're left with
Nothing.
nothing. So those basic rights didn't exist for women back in those days. So that is definitely something the women's suffrage movement was working towards. So not just getting the right to vote, but getting the right to vote so these laws could be changed. But also for men in the area, as we've mentioned before, Mount Pleasant was perhaps surprisingly progressive place in those days.
Yeah.
And so a number of men were very supportive of the women's suffrage movement as well.
In 1872, she took a trip to Europe.
Yes. I think it was part of the international women's suffrage movement. Iowa women were active in the international women's suffrage movement. Carrie Chapman Catt, another well-known Iowan, was active in the International Women's Suffrage Association.
Okay. 1873, Iowa statute was amended.
Yes.
To remove the word white male.
Yes.
And that's all credit to Arabella Mansfield for pushing that. You mentioned this too, which opened the door for people like Mrs. Rush.
Yes.
To get admitted to practice law in 1918, and she became the first black woman in Iowa to be admitted to the bar. From 1869 to 1873, couple years there, but actually for Iowa it's pretty good.
Yes, and actually it was the next time the Iowa legislature met and could change the Iowa code.
Okay.
That's why it took a few years, because the legislature didn't meet every year like they do now. And the process to change the law just took longer. Back then. But basically, the Iowa code did change as soon as it reasonably could to remove the word male and to remove the word white to that specific statute.
Do we know how that vote went?
No.
That would be interesting to know.
Because I'm all, you're giving me more research
stuff to dig into. She passed away in 1911. What was going on there from 1872 all the way to 1911?
She continued to work in academia.
Okay.
So Arabella and John Mansfield both taught at Iowa Wesleyan College for a period of time. And then John and Arabella Mansfield both became professors at Pauw University in Greencastle, Indiana in 1876. And then Arabella became the dean of the School of Art and the dean of the School of Music in 1894. You know, the first woman to be that level.
Oh, wow.
At a college, a university. And she's commemorated at Pauw University for that achievement. She definitely made her mark in academia.
Yeah, nice.
In addition to her mark as the first woman lawyer in the United States.
Yeah, why did they want to move to Indiana?
Job opportunities, I presume, for both of them to be offered a professorship and a bigger school, a university as opposed to a small college.
Okay.
Perhaps.
1911, she passed at age 65.
Yes.
Do we know, was it natural cause?
I presume so. I haven't seen any other cause mentioned.
Did she pass before John, or John passed before her husband?
I believe John passed before she did.
Well, Judge, that's all I have. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Yep.